What's a HS grad like you doing here? Even a month's worth of your salary wouldn't be enough, would it?
This is a high-end sushi restaurant. The stranger mocked me aloud as soon as he heard my background. Standing beside him, my ex-girlfriend was laughing at me in much the same way. I'd say their loud and crude laughter was far more inappropriate for this place. Yet my ex-girlfriend and her fiancé kept jeering at me with enjoyment. There was something I realized from their conversation. Looks like I can give them a piece of my mind too. My name is Jack Smith. I've lived a comfortable life with my family. Father as a civil servant, mother as a part-time housewife, an energetic younger brother, and a kind sister. I love studying where the more effort I put in, the better results I got, and I entered a prep school near my home. I received high grades there too. One day, while I was having a good time with my friends, I was confessed to by Catherine from the class next doors. Catherine was the prettiest girl of the year, and I didn't think I was good enough for her. I assumed it was some kind of joke, but when she said, "Of course not, I confessed because I like you," I was overjoyed, and we started dating. My school life after that was probably one of the happiest times of my life. A stimulating environment where I could goof around with my friends and also motivate each other. Not to mention the time spent with my cute girlfriend. I thought these happy days would continue forever. However, it was all brutally shattered by a single phone call. It was when I had just become a third-year high school student. My homeroom teacher came into the classroom shouting, "Smith, your father collapsed at work. You have to head home right now." I didn't understand what the teacher was saying. Because my dad was fine this morning, he even said with a smile that he could come home a little early today. I was dazed and dumbfounded, but in the meantime, my friends prepared for me to go home, and before I knew it, my teacher was driving me to the hospital. When I arrived at the patient's room, my mother, brother, and sister were already there and crying. The doctor said that my father was in critical condition, and we should keep talking to him. After that, I remember saying something to my father, but I don't remember what it was. My father, as if waiting for all of us to gather, quietly drew his last breath. The wake and funeral services went by in a flash, but it all felt unreal. I still felt like I was having a bad dream, but as time passed, I gradually began to realize that this was reality. I have to protect my family in place of my father. It was about time for me to decide on my career path. I wanted to enter college, but even if I chose a national university, it would still cost a significant amount. I have a younger brother and sister, so it's not like I can spend money on myself. I told my mother that I would get a job instead of going to college.
What are you talking about? Don't worry about the money. My part-time employers said they would hire me as a full-time employee. You're smart, so go to college.
My mother desperately advised me to go to college, but when she realized that I already made my decision, she reluctantly agreed. My homeroom teacher also suggested using a scholarship to enter college, but after considering my determination and family circumstances, they began to help me look for suitable job opportunities. I also reported my decision to not enter college to my friends and Catherine. Among my friends, some criticized my choice, but my close buddies supported my decision. As for Catherine,
Why? You can go to a national university, Jack. Why not just use a scholarship?
to Catherine, it seemed my decision to not pursue higher education was unbelievable. Well, just trying to go to college costs money, and I still have a brother and sister at home. I love studying, but I haven't really thought about what I want to be in the future, so I'm not that desperate to go to college. I lied to Catherine. The truth was that I had a dream job and wanted to go to a college where I could study specialized subjects, but considering my siblings, I had no choice but to give it up. Catherine, who did not seem satisfied with my words, became clearly disgruntled and coldly said, "What? That's disappointing. I was dating you because I saw a future in you. I can't deal with late chess graduate without ambition. Let's break up," and left. To think I'd lose both my father and my beloved girlfriend. But it seems like Catherine wasn't after me but the title I might have gotten in the future. While it came as a shock, I was able to gradually recover thanks to the support of my friends. After that, with the help of my professor, I landed a job as a clerk at a great company. For the sake of my supportive friends, my teacher, and my family, I committed myself to my job. 2 years passed by in a flash, and I was to attend my coming-of-age ceremony. At the ceremony, I got to meet old friends and enjoy the lively atmosphere, but that atmosphere was shattered by the arrival of Catherine.
Oh my, if it isn't Jack! I'm shocked to see you here considering your fall from grace.
Catherine, it's been a while. What do you mean by fall from grace? I responded to Catherine as calmly as possible.
Well, you used to have top grades and an elite HS, but now you're just an office worker that anyone can be. You're nothing more than a failure.
Upon uttering this mockery, Catherine began talking about how happy her student life has been, how she went to a prestigious private university and had been working as an amateur fashion model, how she won the college beauty contest and how busy she's been ever since. Although she doesn't have a specific BF, she enjoys a glamorous life attracting the attention of many men around her. She was chatting non-stop, unprompted. The Catherine I knew was strong-willed but was a kind girl with many friends. However, the current her made sarcastic comments and had no intentions of correcting her mocking attitude. She must be like this to others as well. No one was approaching Catherine, and she was clearly isolated.
It sure is uncomfortable to talk to or be around people coming from a lower social hierarchy. Oh well, losers should stick just together, LOL.
Upon laughing as if to mock all those around her, Catherine quickly left. I couldn't even catch a glimpse of the Catherine I once liked. My memories with Catherine were happy ones, so even though we had a terrible breakup, I didn't harbor any resentment. But seeing Catherine as she is now, I feel a sense of pity and sadness.
Jack, are you okay? Catherine wasn't that terrible before. I was surprised.
The one who talked to me was Lauren, a high school classmate. We were in the same class for 3 years, and she was one of the friends who supported me during my hard times. You said that terrible, so did you always think she was kind of bad? I was curious about Lauren's words and asked.
Yeah. Catherine's been declaring since high school that she'll become a celebrity in the future. That's why she said she wanted to date you, someone who's academically excellent and has a promising future. But she didn't go so far as to insult or look down on others back then.
Lauren answered with a wry smile. I see. I bet Catherine is over the moon living life akin to a celebrity, to the point that she doesn't even realize how arrogant and vulgar she's acting. I hope I never see her again. With that thought, I continued to enjoy my time with my friends. A few days later, I was at work, fighting the urge to sleep. It's been 2 years since I joined the company, and I've been wanting to acquire some special skills. As a result, I started studying programming and IT that I've been interested in for a while, and slowly gained qualifications. Using those qualifications, I started a side job in secret. Recently, It's clear that the side job has become too much. That's because my younger brother was accepted to college, and I needed more money than ever. My brother plans to use a scholarship, but I still wanted to prepare as much as I could. With that in mind, I threw myself into work and the side job. Although my company didn't prohibit side jobs, it wasn't a very favorable environment for it, so I tried to keep it a secret. But that day, coincidentally, the deadlines for my side job piled up, and I had to fight off sleepiness after staying up all night to work.
Smith, come over here for a second.
While I was dozing off, I was called into an empty meeting room by my senior, Thompson, who was a skilled worker and popular among the staff.
Have you been out partying at night? You look sleepy and unfocused at work.
I was taken aback by Thompson's harsh tone. No, I wasn't out partying. The thing is, I've been doing a side job. As I made up my mind and relayed my reasons, Thompson started laughing aloud.
Hey, don't take me too seriously. It was a joke. I didn't really think you were out partying. I heard that you're from a single-parent family and you have younger siblings, so I figured you must be working part-time or something. You look so drowsy that people might start to notice, so I thought I'd help you out anyway. What kind of side job are you doing?
Feeling relieved by his casual attitude, I confessed that I've been studying programming and IT, and that I was using those skills for my part-time job.
What? Really, Smith, you can handle administrative work, and you have those skills too. This is perfect. You're the exact kind of person I've been looking for.
Thompson said joyfully and grabbed my shoulder.
Actually, I've been thinking about starting a business. There are some things to prepare, so I plan to get it moving in about 2 years. Why don't we do it together, Smith?
I was surprised at the sudden proposal. Hearing Thompson talk so passionately about starting a business made me want to join him. However, I had a family to support. I couldn't give a response for a while. 5 years have passed since then, and I was waiting for someone in a high-end sushi restaurant. Just then, Catherine walked in looking intimate with a slightly older man. I turned my face away so as not to be noticed, but Catherine quickly spotted me and approached me.
Hey, aren't you Jack? What are you doing here? Did you enter the wrong restaurant?
Catherine said with a mocking tone and started talking to the man next to her.
Oh, this is Jack, my classmate. Remember I told you about him? Despite being in a prep school, he chose not to go to college and lives life at the bottom of the social ladder. My ex-BF.
Oh, that weirdo? What's late chess graduate doing at a restaurant like this? It won't be enough even if he spends a mint's worth of his salary.
The man scoffed at me in the same way as Catherine, laughing vulgarly.
Let me introduce him. This is James Anderson. Unlike a lowly HS grad, he's an elite worker coming from a prestigious university and even has experience studying abroad. He was working for a major company until recently.
Unprompted, Catherine began talking about how Anderson was such a high-spec and handsome guy. I felt like I heard his name before and was trying to remember where, so I wasn't really listening to what Catherine was saying.
He was headhunted and he'll be joining Company S as a future section manager. Jack, you should learn from him, or else your future looks pretty bleak.
Kath, and that's impossible. Even if a bottom-off-the-barrel HS grad were to learn from a prestigious university grad, it's hopeless.
They shrugged their shoulders and laughed. The customers around us were disgusted by their vulgarity. Company S is a newly established company that has a high degree of specialization and is growing at a rapid pace. I remembered where I heard Catherine's fiancé's name, and I couldn't help but laugh.
What are you laughing at? You lose your mind or something.
Catherine got angry at my behavior.
I don't remember being laughed at by a lowlife.
Anderson also looked clearly upset. Well, I'm sure it's annoying to be laughed at by someone you consider as inferior. So I decided to tell them why I laughed. Sorry. I thought the name James Anderson sounded familiar, and I just realized it's because he's supposed to become my subordinate. I found it funny.
How? What are you talking about? Were you listening? James is joining Company S. Why would he become a subordinate of someone like you?
Catherine, who seemed to think she was being mocked, had turned bright red. I heard you. I work at Company S.
What? Now you're just lying in my face. You're just a clerk at some no-name company. What's with your attitude? How?
This time, I showed Catherine, who was calling me a liar, my business card. On the card, my name was written alongside the title Information Systems Division Manager.
That name.
Anderson, who saw the business card, had froze. He must have at least heard the name of his future boss. Anderson's face gradually turned pale. By the way, Anderson's the one who's lying. He has no experience studying abroad. He entered university straight after HS, but he had to repeat 2 years. His previous company was a subsidiary of a large corporation, not the large corporation itself. Wait a minute, I haven't heard a word about you being headhunted or the next section manager. Didn't you come to our company through a regular interview process? Red-faced Catherine had gone speechless, while Anderson had turned even paler. The contrast was amusing.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you're the general manager, and you're still in your 20s?
Catherine, regaining her senses, asked. She's more interested in my position than Anderson's lie, huh? Yep. I'm one of the founding members of this company, I said with a smile. That's right, I was one of the people who helped build Company S, which was established by my senior, Thompson. Thompson was persistent and tried to convince me every day when I was still unsure of my decision. My desire to join the new business grew stronger day by day, and I finally decided to discuss it with my family.
That's great. You've worked hard enough for our family, Jack. We'll be all right. You should do what you love. We're rooting for you.
My mother encouraged me.
Bro, I got a full scholarship. Tuition won't be a problem, and I'll start working part-time, so we're good.
Jack, I'm planning to go to nursing school. I found a way to cover the costs, so you don't have to worry. You should do what you love.
My younger brother and sister also showed their support. With the encouragement from my family, I decided to start a business with Thompson, and that's what led me to where I am today. As an executive, I'm involved in management while working alongside the staff in the department that oversees the internal systems. Anderson, we're going to retract our job offer. You look down and insult people you've just met, and you lie. We don't need someone like you in our company.
No, wait, sir, please.
Anderson pleaded, but I gave him a hard look and said in a low voice, you wouldn't want to work at the bottom of society either, would you? If you understand, get lost. Anderson quickly left the restaurant. Your fiancé just ran out, you should go after him. I told Catherine, who was standing there stunned.
I don't care about him anymore. I'm going to break off the engagement with that liar. Rather than that.
Catherine came and sat next to me, leaning in closer.
You're amazing, Jack. You climbed to the top with your abilities, even without a prestigious education. Hey, can we get back together?
And this was the same woman who had just been making fun of me moments ago. It was the first time I'd seen such a blatant turnaround. Even the other customers and the restaurant staff were speechless. Just as the atmosphere was getting awkward, a cheerful voice broke the silence.
Jack. Sorry I kept you waiting. Wait, Catherine?
I turned around to see Lauren. Sorry, Lauren, it's nothing. Hey, owner, could we use the private room in the back? I pushed past Catherine, took Lauren's hand, and headed to the back room. Catherine tried to follow us, but the owner and his staff threw her out. The truth is, I've been dating Lauren, and I was planning to propose to her that day, which is why I invited her to this restaurant owned by a friend of my father's. Well, there was some drama before the proposal, which did drain me a bit, but I managed to explain what had happened before Lauren arrived, proposed to her then and there, and fortunately, she said yes. Later, Catherine sent me messages asking to get back together and even sent some intimidating messages to Lauren, but we told her we'd report her to the police and then blocked her. We haven't heard from Catherine since. Of course, we officially retracted Anderson's job offer as well. My boss trusted me completely and even said, "We dodged a bullet by not hiring that crazy guy, thanks." And now, I'm happily married to Lauren. She's a wonderful woman who takes great care of me and my family. I've always put myself last since my father passed away, but with the help of my family and others around me, I've made it this far. I've decided that from now on, I'll give some more care to my own interests alongside living with my family.
I started working as a carpenter's apprentice right after graduating from junior high school at the age of 16. I hated studying, but was good with my hands. I wanted to pursue a job where I could create something, so I became an apprentice to a carpenter who was an acquaintance of my father. I am still grateful to my parents who understand me and agreed with it. With the desire to repay them, I diligently committed myself to learn the work. Surrounded by skilled laborers who were quicker with their hands than their mouths, I grew and became a well-known carpenter in the industry by the time I reached 30. I received jobs directly from large construction companies, and my reputation spread, leading to more significant projects. I got married and had a daughter, and my work was going well. I believe that was the best time of my life. However, when I was 50 years old, there was a small accident at the site. The materials I had piled up collapsed. I managed to save my coworker, Tom, who was about to be crushed, but in the process, I severely injured my right shoulder, which resulted in a lasting disability in my right hand. I could still manage daily life fairly well, but I couldn't swing a hammer anymore. Without saying anything to anyone, I left the carpentry world. I thought it would be tough for Tom if I revealed the reason for quitting. I joined a small construction crew where I didn't know anyone, and now I'm doing odd jobs at different work sites. Fortunately, my daughter was already independent as a working adult, and my wife had a job, so I didn't cause any trouble for my family. After I helped Tom, my wife laughed and said, "That's so like you," and my daughter looked at me with a mix of disbelief and amusement, saying, "Seriously, Dad, you're too kind." But neither of them blamed me. Blessed with a warm family, I truly felt happy. In the field of construction work, my role as a laborer is mainly supportive. My main tasks are carrying materials and cleaning. I also perform tasks requested by laborers, supporting them almost like a devoted wife. To be honest, my position on the site is nothing significant. However, because of that, the work was easy, and I often moved to different sites, so I was able to enjoy it in my own way without encountering carpenters I know. I am currently working at the Jones Construction Company. I used to get a lot of work from this construction company in the past. While working, I nostalgically thought about my past days of working with this construction company. Then, one day, there was a small accident. It was the day for material delivery, but the site supervisor, Mr. Brown, was absent. The truck driver was at a loss as to where to place the delivered materials. I thought it might be intrusive, but I gave instructions to the driver and helped carry the materials into the site. The driver was happy and left, But when Supervisor Brown returned to the site, he scolded me severely.
You're just a laborer. Why the hell are you doing things? You're not entitled to do these things.
A young supervisor who appeared to be in his 20s nudged my head. Although I was annoyed, I held back and apologized. I'm sorry. No one was here, so.
Even so, why are you giving instructions? A laborer like you doesn't know anything about the site's workflow, so don't do unnecessary things.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ. A laborer should just shut up and clean. Worthless trash like you, don't interfere with my work, acting like you're in the high position.
At that remark, the foreman of the laborers finally changed his expression and confronted the supervisor.
What the heck is this? It's mostly your fault for being absent. If it weren't for Bob, the truck driver couldn't have gone to the next job.
When the supervisor said, "What did you say?" and was about to grab the chief by the collar, another foreman of iron workers intervened, saying, "That's enough," and stepped between the two.
He handled the material delivery correctly. It's your fault for not being here when the truck arrived. Instead of complaining, how about saying thank you to him?
Quietly spoken, the supervisor Brown glared at me and went away without saying anything. The foreman of the ironworkers patted my back. "Don't worry, it's a typical thing for a young supervisor. You didn't do anything wrong, thanks." He said that and went back to work. I also nodded slightly and went back to work with the chief. However, from that day on, Supervisor Brown started finding fault with me for various things. He would call me out for trivial matters and make snide remarks. To make matters worse, I was even made to clean the restroom at the site. I was definitely getting annoyed, but since I was about to move from this site soon, I endured it. Every day was a gloomy day, but I didn't want to worry my wife, so I kept going to work without taking a break. Then one day, I felt unwell since morning, and my head was spinning. When I measured my temperature, it was slightly over 99 degrees. I thought about taking a day off, but today was the day for loading, and I really didn't want to miss it.
Are you okay? You look pale.
My wife Kate peered at my face with concern, but I smiled and replied, "I'm fine. I'll be done with work today. I'll take a day off tomorrow." After finishing my coffee, I got up and packed the lunchbox Kate had made for me into my backpack and left the house. When I arrived at the site, there were a large number of items for loading. I carefully carried them, but around noon, my fever started to rise and my legs became unsteady.
Bob, what's wrong?
The foreman hurriedly supported me as I stumbled. But I ended up dropping the items I was carrying.
Your face is all red. Don't you have a fever?
The foreman said with concern, peering at my face, and at that moment, Supervisor Brown came running, saying, "What are you doing?" He glared at the fallen items and sneered, "Can't you even carry a single item properly? You're useless."
Mr. Brown, Bob may have a fever. Can I let him go home?
The foreman said, but Supervisor Brown said no and glared at me.
A damn construction worker who's useless for anything else, and today is the only day he may be able to do some work. You have a fever on a day like this. Can't you even manage your health? You're such a jerk and lowlife.
The usual sarcastic remarks began, but I didn't have the energy to retort. My head was spinning, and I felt nauseous.
Hurry up and carry it. Don't dawdle.
I was tapped on the shoulder, and I almost fell backwards. At that moment, I heard a shouting voice, saying, "Stop it." "What did you say?" said the supervisor, and he turned around. There, I spotted a familiar figure. It was Tom Smith, my former colleague.
"What the hell did you say? Who do you think you're talking to?"
Tom walked towards us boldly and grabbed Supervisor Brown by the collar.
Tom, why are you here?
Supervisor Brown turned pale. Tom let go of the director's collar with a forceful push after landing a punch on his head.
"Just shut up. because your planning is so messed up and we're falling behind schedule. The president told me to go help you.
Tom spat out his words and then looked at me.
Hey, Bob, long time no see.
He bowed his head. I looked at my old comrade. It's been a while. I've heard you are the head of the main team directly run by the construction company. That's quite something. The main team is a group directly employed by the construction company. At the construction site, there are various professionals who gather, but they all work as subcontractors receiving jobs from the construction company. The main team, however, is not a subcontractor but directly employed by the construction company. Young Supervisor Brown wouldn't stand a chance against someone like Tom. Tom's face turned teary as he shook his head.
I owe it to you, Bob, that I can now work like this. This is all thanks to you. I didn't know you quit being a carpenter and became a construction worker. Why didn't you tell me?
I didn't know how to respond. The supervisor looked at us with a puzzled expression. Tom turned to the supervisor and said, "You know, Bob is my mentor and my savior. He was a famous carpenter in our industry, to the point where everyone knows his name. He was even chosen to work for Jones Construction, and yet, you dare to speak ill of him." Tom struck the director's head with his fist once again. With wide-open eyes in astonishment, the supervisor looked at me.
I'll remind this guy,
he said, and I looked at the supervisor. It's true that construction work might be considered the lowest level job on the site, but you know, people from various professions are coordinating and cooperating with each other here in order to build a structure. Construction workers are essential in supporting the site, although their works are not visible. Mr. Brown, if you plan on continuing this line of work, you'll have to change your mindset from the ground up. Otherwise, laborers won't follow you. Finally able to express some of what I wanted to say, I stared at the supervisor, who was looking down. Tom said, with a stern tone, "You're such a buster, say more."
Bob has done a lot of work for this construction company. Everybody in higher positions knows about him. I'll make sure to report everything about you. Be prepared. Bob is right. You can't disrespect the people who actually work on the site. Otherwise, we can't do a good work. If the laborers don't do their jobs, we can't meet the deadlines at all.
As a final blow, the supervisor drooped his shoulders dejectedly. In a small voice, barely audible, he said, "I'm sorry." He kept staring at his feet. "Bob," Tom called me, looking puzzled.
Did you quit being a carpenter because of me? How can I make it up to you?
I laughed at his words. "Come on, it's not your fault, Tom. I chose to leave carpentry and become a construction worker by my own choice. I'm surrounded by good colleagues, and I'm enjoying it." I replied, and Tom showed signs of wanting to say something, but he just smiled and said, "I see." "Anyway, Bob, go home for today. Take care of yourself, all right? Will you meet me again?" I said, "Thank you, I'll do that. Let's meet again." Tom smiled happily, gave the supervisor a strong pat on the back, and left. Thanks to a good night's sleep, my fever went down, and I recovered. I went to the construction site as usual and apologized to the foreman for leaving early yesterday. He said, "Don't push yourself." After the morning meeting, as I was about to go to my station, someone called out, "Bob." When I turned around, Black, the department manager at Jones Construction, was standing there.
"Long time no see,"
he said, nodding his head slightly towards me. We had many meetings together in the past. His calm way of speaking hadn't changed.
"I heard about yesterday's incident from Tom, the foreman. I had no idea that you were working as a subcontractor construction worker on our site. You're not planning to go back to being a carpenter."
I nodded in reply to his questions. "As you know, I can't swing a hammer with this right hand. For now, I'm taking it easy." I answered, and Black said, "I see." And then he said, "Actually, the president asked me to ask you for a favor. Can you listen to it?" "Me, what is it?"
"Yes. Currently, Our construction company is dealing with several sites, but all of them tend to be delayed. As you know, Bob, there seems to be a lack of communication between the supervisors and the laborers. Well, the interpersonal relationships are not going well.
Upon hearing that, Black scratched his head. I couldn't help but chuckle. It wasn't just Brown, but the friction between the university-educated supervisors who work as regular employees of the construction company and the self-taught laborers has always been a long-standing issue.
So, there has been a discussion about appointing someone as a supervisor on site, separate from the main supervisor. We have been looking for someone who can facilitate smooth communication with the laborers, especially in the case of young supervisors. The president is very enthusiastic about entrusting this role to you, Bob. What do you think? We will provide a suitable position for you as our regular employee. Can you accept it?
I was taken aback by suddenly being asked such a thing. Black continued.
This is something that can only be entrusted to someone who fully understands the site and the laborers. Of course, we also value personal qualities. We want to ask for your help in nurturing young supervisors. If the site environment improves, it will be easier for the laborers to work. In that case, there will be no one like you, Bob, who will have an unpleasant experience like this time. With a pleasant working environment, work progresses smoothly and there are no delays in the schedule.
His words were passionate, and it moved my heart. I think Tom talked to the construction company for my sake, but I could feel that Black genuinely needed me. Can I have some time to think about it? I said, and Black responded with a firm nod, saying, of course.
We look forward to your favorable response. By the way, as for Brown, he has expressed a desire to take a break from the site for a while. He wants to start over from scratch. It's the first time I've seen him so serious since he joined the company. Right now, he's assisting on a site with an experienced supervisor.
I see. I hope he becomes a good supervisor. I said that sincerely. He was an arrogant and unpleasant guy, but I would be happy if he could start fresh after this incident.
I hope so, too. Well then, see you later.
With that, Black left. I stood there for a while, lost in thought, when someone tapped my shoulder.
Go for it, Bob. You're more than just a construction worker here. If someone like you could take charge of the site, there would be fewer people having a hard time.
It was the foreman of the construction workers who said that. It seemed like he had overheard our conversation just now.
We construction workers are looking forward to having a site where we're not looked down upon. We're counting on you,
he said with a smile, and I nodded slightly. Ever since my injury, I had been carrying a feeling of giving up on life, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad to make a fresh start here. Let's give it a try, I murmured, and the foreman happily patted my back, saying, that's the spirit.
Mia. When I turned to the sound of my classmate's call, there was a friend from freshman year running towards me from the other end of the hallway.
Hey, I heard you're going to perform at a famous concert.
Oh, you heard? Yes, I am.
That's so cool. Why didn't you tell me sooner?
There's going to be a live stream. You should watch it if you can.
What, really? I'll definitely watch it.
With my friend's loud voice, other students started to gather around. It seemed many people knew about my concert appearance.
A concert?
She plays the violin. Didn't you know about Mia?
Her violin skills are well known.
Oh, is that so?
Suddenly, surrounded by classmates, I started to panic.
Wow. If you're performing in such a big event, don't you get a lot of allowance from your parents?
One of my classmates said that. Suddenly, I felt tighten in my heart.
What kind of nonsense are you saying? Hey, don't crowd around Mia.
My friend jumped in to defend me, and slowly the crowd dispersed. The truth is, I don't have parents who give me any allowance.
Mia, you're the older sister, so you can handle this, right?
I wonder how many times I've heard those words in my life. When I was younger, all I could do was nod in agreement with a lump in my throat. I was about to turn 4 when my younger brother was born. I was supposed to get a cake and have a party for my 4th birthday, but in the end, my birthday party never happened. Both of my parents were constantly at the side of my brother, Derek, who was just born and was not in a stable condition. Once he was born, both my mom and dad had to make frequent hospital visits, so I started staying at my grandpa's house. My kindergarten bag was always at my grandpa's house. My clothes and toys increasingly found a new home at my grandpa's place. When I finally returned home after a while, many of my belongings had disappeared, replaced by Derek's stuff. But I couldn't be mad. After all, he was frail. Just before I graduated from kindergarten, our family had planned a vacation. It was the theme park I had always wanted to visit. But right before the trip, Derek fell ill. He ended up being hospitalized, so my dad suggested, since Mom has to stay with him, how about we go there, just you and me? But I shook my head. If Derek and Mom weren't going, I didn't want to go either. Despite giving up on a lot because of him, the one thing I truly got into was the violin, which I started learning the year I entered elementary school. I begged for a violin, and my dad bought it for me. At the time, I was just ecstatic that my dad paid attention to me, but now I think maybe he just got it to keep me busy. I wasn't good at the violin at all. I only managed to produce weird, screeching sounds. But whenever I played in front of Derek, he would laugh, probably finding the strange sounds amusing. That made me laugh too, and I often put on little concerts for him. Gradually, I began to enjoy playing and eventually could play proper songs. He always listened to my performances with joy. Even though I kind of resented him, I was happy when he enjoyed my performances, so I even gave him handmade concert tickets. Those tickets, made from folded paper and pen, were always front row seats. I was frequently left at my grandpa's house, and I don't have many memories of my parents paying much attention to me. Even though I had to put up with many things, I didn't particularly hate my life with my family and Derek. This all changed when I was in 3rd grade. One day, my violin teacher handed me a letter with a big smile.
This is for you, Mia. Hand it over to your parents. They'll surely be delighted.
She said. I passed the letter to my parents.
Isn't this an invitation to perform at a concert?
Upon reading the letter, my mother exclaimed in surprise. It was an invitation to perform at a children's violin concert in New York. This concert, featuring elementary to middle school students, was, of course, something I had always admired. It was like a gateway to becoming a renowned violinist on the world stage. I felt the joy of being recognized slowly filling my heart, and I looked up at my parents.
Mia, this is amazing. To think you'd be invited to such a concert.
My parents were thrilled for me. I was beyond happy. For the first time since my brother, Derek, was born, I felt my parents were genuinely seeing me. But that night, as I woke up to use the bathroom, I overheard my parents speaking.
So, what are we going to do about the concert?
There's nothing we can do.
They were talking in hushed tones with troubled faces. I couldn't hear everything clearly, and as I reached for the door to ask them about it, I stopped. It's because I heard my name.
We can't do that. She would end up coming with us.
Feeling a sense of dread, I quickly left the spot. What were they discussing? I found out soon enough. That weekend, I packed my few clothes, toys, and school items into a bag. Most of my belongings were already at my grandparents' house, so there wasn't much to pack. Holding that bag, I arrived at my grandparents' place. My grandmother welcomed me with a warm smile and a comforting hug.
Listen, don't cause any trouble for your grandparents.
My father told me. Then, after one last look back, he walked away. I haven't seen him since. Not just him. Neither my mother nor Derek came back. At first, I believed they'd come to get me after a little while. But as the weeks turned into months, I realized this was different. I had been abandoned by my parents. I once cried and told my grandfather about this. With a stern face, he only said, "They have their reasons. They'll be back." Whenever I cried, my grandmother would always cook my favorite dish for dinner. A creamy omelet, different from the one my mom used to make. While I ate, she would gently pat my head and say, "Because you are always so patient and good, God is watching over. Something wonderful is bound to happen to you someday." Time passed, and even when I started high school, my parents never showed up. Gradually, I came to believe that they were worried about Derek's health and never really cared about me since I was healthy. I decided I'd become hugely successful as a violinist, gain global recognition, and one day, I'll get back at them. That thought kept me going. And then, finally, I was invited to a prestigious violin concert. It was the grown-up version of the concert I had been invited to in elementary school. In this concert, there was a segment where high school and college students would perform. I was selected to be part of it. This was one of the goals I had always aimed for. It's a concert that's also being streamed. My parents might hear about it. Maybe then they'll start to see me differently. Perhaps I can prove myself to them. With that faint hope, the days flew by, and the concert date arrived before I knew it. On that day, my grandparents were also coming to watch, which I was looking forward to. I was excited to show them how much I've grown, as they've been like parents to me. Of course, I was nervous too. I had headed to New York a bit early and had a reservation at a hotel near the venue. My grandparents were scheduled to arrive on the morning of the concert. On the day of the concert, I woke up earlier than usual. I gazed outside from my hotel room, lost in thought. My goal is still far away. I want to be a violinist who can perform worldwide. But today is a step towards that goal. I took a small piece of paper out of my wallet. It was a handmade concert ticket stub I had made for Derek a long time ago. On a folded piece of paper with a dashed line, Mia's concert was written in childish handwriting. He had begged, "I want to see your concert," so I tore off the stub and set up a seat in front of me. I can hardly remember his face anymore, but I loved seeing that sparkling smile. Even if my parents weren't watching me, even if it was because of him. Then the doorbell rang. Startled, I took the paper ticket stub into my pocket and headed to the door. It's much earlier than the time I heard that the grandparents would come. Had they already come? When I opened the door, my grandparents were there. And behind them, Dad? Yes, it was my dad. I hadn't seen him since I was in the 3rd grade. Questions like, "Why now?" and "What are you doing here after all this time?" flooded my mind. But I couldn't voice any of them. My father's face was as pale as a sheet. He looked so ill, I thought he might collapse. By the look on his face, I could tell something serious had happened.
"Listen, Mir.
My grandmother began.
We need to talk."
From behind her, my father leaned in.
Derek is.
At those words, my head began to spin. Why is this man talking about Derek, even at a time like this? It's been 7 years since he last saw his daughter, who he had ignored. But seeing the distress in his eyes, I swallowed my annoyance. What had happened to Derek? "Please come in." I invited the 3 of them inside. As they sat on the sofa in my room, my father, his face still pale, apologized deeply, almost kneeling. I was taken aback.
"I'm so sorry, Mia. I regret leaving you all these years."
He said, he's still apologizing. In my memories, my dad was a more robust man. However, the man in front of me now has more gray hair and has slimmed down a bit.
"Derek's condition isn't good."
I clenched my lips tightly. I knew it. My parents started to explain everything that had happened, choosing their words carefully. When I was in 3rd grade and got an invitation to perform at a violin concert, Derek was fighting for his life. They never went into detail with me as a child, but he was born with a heart condition. He was always said to have a short life expectancy, with doubts if he would even make it to adulthood. There was a treatment, but 7 years ago, it wasn't available in the US and we would have had to move to Europe. My parents couldn't give up on his future and started considering moving. But when they were making these plans, that's when I got my concert invitation. The concert in New York clashed with our departure date for Europe. They were genuinely happy about my chance to perform at the concert. They remembered the joy of buying me a violin, even if it was a bit pricey, after I had pestered them saying, "I want to play." Seeing me play it in front of Derek always made them happy. Now, I have got the opportunity to perform at a concert considered a gateway for emerging violinists. There wasn't anything happier than that. But the issue was Derek and the move to Europe. My parents thought that, if they told me they were moving for him, I would insist on quitting the concert and moving with them. They had already made me sacrifice a lot for him and didn't want to ask anymore. They wanted me to follow my dreams. Recalling a conversation I overheard from my parents one night, I remember them saying,
"We can't do that. She would end up coming with us."
that was what they meant. They didn't want to stand in the way of their daughter's dreams. Yet, they couldn't give up on saving their son's life either. My parents were tormented by this dilemma. Seeing their struggle, my grandparents made a suggestion.
"We'll take care of Mia. You two focus on getting Derek the treatment he needs."
And so, they left me with my grandparents and headed to Europe with him. In Europe, his health started improving, but it took much longer than anticipated. By the time his health stabilized and they got the doctor's permission to return, only a short time had passed. Perhaps due to the strains of the long journey, his health deteriorated again. Now, 14-year-old Derek is awaiting major surgery in New York. Since coming back, he started mentioning my name, something he rarely did in Europe. He often said he wanted to see me and hear me play the violin. Then, last night, his condition suddenly worsened. My mom is with him right now, and they might have to move the surgery up a few days. They believe the surgery might increase his chances of recovery.
Mia, I know it's a lot to ask after telling you all this, but could you visit Derek just once?
I was in shock, looking at my dad as he hung his head. This was all too much to process at once. The reason they left me behind, Derek's illness. Leaving without explaining anything wasn't ideal, but they had my best interests at heart and the current state of his health. It was an overwhelming amount of information, and my head was spinning. After a long pause, I finally spoke. I get the situation, but I still can't process all of it. "I'm sorry, can you leave for now?" A raspy voice came out. Dad looked up. His face wore an expression of sheer despair, one filled with anguish. Why did he have to appear in front of me today, of all days? He said he wanted to support my dream, but then he left me behind. I get it. Derek's condition worsened suddenly yesterday. Still, his actions felt so out of place. There's no way I can accept these people who abandoned me for 7 years and just ditch my important concert. I'm sorry, I need to focus. I stood up and left the room. I couldn't bear to see my father's face, twisted as if he were about to cry, any longer. I walked and walked until I arrived in front of the concert venue. I could see some staff members here and there, setting up the venue.
"Hey, is that you? Ms. Mia Johnson?"
I turned around upon hearing the voice and saw the man responsible for the concert, the one I met at yesterday's meeting, approaching. Good morning.
"Good morning, you're early."
Well, I'm sorry, I just came for a walk. I'll be heading back.
"Oh, you're leaving. Don't you want to check out the venue?"
Hearing his words, I stopped in my tracks, having decided to head back to the hotel. Many people were checking out the venue.
"How do you feel? You'll be performing there today?"
The stage he pointed to was shining so brightly, it almost blinded me. It's amazing. I'm getting nervous.
"Don't worry about it. You're a hard worker."
It's probably just a flattering. Yet, for some reason, my eyes started to tear up. I've worked hard because I love playing the violin. I always wanted my parents and Derek to notice me someday.
"Mia, play it."
I felt as if I heard young Derek's voice. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crumpled ticket stub. While staring at the worn-out stub, I lifted my head. "Thank you. I'll be on my way now."
"All right, looking forward to your performance."
I shook hands with him and started my way back to the hotel. As I walked, I dialed my grandmother's number.
For the high school category, Next up is Mia Johnson.
My name was called. The sound of resounding applause filled the venue. I walked up to the stage, the sound of my heels echoing. I will not go to the hospital. That's what I decided. I want to play the violin for myself. I faced the audience. The stage was well lit, so I couldn't clearly see the darkened audience. In the middle of the dimly lit seats, I spotted a camera. It was a camera for broadcasting. I want to play the violin for myself. And the person I wanted to listen to it was on the other side of that camera. I stared straight into the camera and took a deep bow. Then, 30 minutes later, I left the concert venue and was running. After finishing my performance, I ran straight out of the stage. It was hard to run in heels in a classy off-the-shoulder dress, but I didn't care. Were they able to see me? Could they hear me? I rushed into the hospital they told me about, and the receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. But when I told her my name, she seemed to understand and led me to the room. I placed my hand on the door with the name tag Derek Johnson. When I opened it, a gust of wind blew in from outside. I hurriedly shut my eyes, and when I opened them slowly, several adults turned to look at me. The familiar face of my mother looked at me in surprise. Further in, I saw Derek lying down. He was connected to several tubes, but he widened his eyes when he saw me.
Mia.
His voice was surprisingly strong, and I let out a big sigh. Did you watch?
Yeah, I watched.
He gave me a faint smile. His expression hadn't changed since he was a child.
Wait, you're the performer from the concert earlier.
A man in a white coat, probably a doctor, said in a surprised tone.
Oh, so you're Mia. Well, truly a miracle.
The doctor looked at me and chuckled, making me tilt my head. A miracle.
You had the concert broadcasted to the senior folks, right? When Derek heard your performance, his condition stabilized. It's really quite mysterious. If a violin could cure illnesses, we doctors would be out of business.
The doctor said in a gentle tone.
Indeed, I'm so surprised. That's my Mia.
She let go of Derek's hand, took mine, and said,
You were fantastic.
I clenched my fists. I was holding back the tears that were threatening to come.
Mia.
Derek called me closer to his bed. From a drawer beside his bed, he pulled out a small case. Inside was a small piece of paper. I immediately recognized it as the concert ticket I made.
Can I still use this?
I held back a laugh and said with a wry smile, That's just a used stub, isn't it? It's no good, but I'll bring you a real ticket next time. His face lit up with a big smile. I'm still living with my grandparents. Derek is supposed to come back after his surgery, and then we'll start living as a family again. The time we lost isn't coming back, and I haven't forgiven everything. But now, I really want to live properly as a family of 4. Plus, I plan to host 7 years' worth of concerts for them.
I was raised in a single-parent household by my dad, but I never felt like I was missing out on anything. My dad had money and he never skimped on raising me. The biggest stumbling block in my life was getting sick at the age of 18. Right before S80, I was diagnosed with a serious disease and was devastated. Even I was given an individual's life expectancy and grappled with life and death, but my dad tirelessly supported me and made sure I got surgery. Thankfully, the surgery completely cured my disease. I started college 2 years late, and I didn't want any pity, so I kept my disease a secret. Looking up to my hard-working dad, I studied hard, and now I'm a top-notch salesman, hustling every day. My efforts, frequently visiting clients, have paid off, and I consistently rank at the top in sales performance. I'm grateful that the boss trusts me and has assigned me the responsibility of training the newbies. Work is going great, but my personal relationships, not so much. That's because there's an employee in my sales department named Lily Johnson who doesn't like me.
Respecting Mike. Why? He's not that bright.
Today, as always, she is loudly bad-mouthing me so I can hear. The people who are involved with her are the newbies that I am in charge of training. The newbies, caught in the middle of the tiff between me and Lily, can only force a smile, while she don't care about it, and kept bad-mouthing me.
Mike started college 2 years late, and it's not even a prestigious one. He might be good at sales, but with that brain, who knows how long it'll last.
She has an arrogant personality and often bosses people around. Though she's a nuisance, no one dares to reprimand her, because she is the daughter of one of our major clients. Lily, you see, got into our company through connections and started the same year as I did. I guess my success in sales is too much for prideful Lily to bear. She often mocks me, and I'm used to it. But it's heart-wrenching to see the newbies dragged into her constant bad-mouthing. Ready to head out to a client meeting, I donned my jacket and grabbed my bag, giving a reassuring pat on a newbie's shoulder as I passed. Think of me whatever way you want. Maybe you, Lily, should keep your mouth shut and get back to work. Seeing the relief on the newbie's face, I noticed Lily's face turning red with anger. She glared at me, not hiding her annoyance.
Well, seeing your plain face is so depressing. I better finish my work soon or I'll be late for my dinner date. Oh, I'm sorry. I bet with that face you don't have many women chasing you, right? And no girlfriend, I presume. Sorry, that sounded like I was bragging.
She often brags about her wonderful boyfriend. He's the heir to a huge corporation, and being the beautiful heiress she is, he's the perfect match for her. But whatever kind of person her boyfriend might be, it's none of my business. Work is my love right now. Her sarcastic comments never bother me. I headed off to my sales appointment, and even though she was glaring at my retreating back, I didn't care. My motivation right now is improving my sales performances. Maybe because I once had a brush with death due to an disease, but I find joy in being of use to the company and talking to various people. However, to my parents, it's concerning that I, at this age, don't have a girlfriend. One day, my dad brought up the idea of a blind date. I wasn't in the mood for relationship or marriage right now, but my eager dad had already arranged a date for me. It was bothersome, but now that the date was set, I felt I had to go. I headed to the designated luxury hotel that day. I thought I'd just meet her, and then either turn her down or she'd turn me down. But when I opened the door to the private room I was led to, I was lost for words. Sitting there was Lily. She was wearing a red dress and had her hair done up. She looked beautiful. When she saw me, her eyes widened in shock.
No way. The blind date is with you, Mike. This is the worst.
I felt the same way. Seeing her displeased expression, I sighed and reluctantly entered the room. This blind date was set up by my dad and her father, so my dad would be joining us. Her father, David, should also be here, but like my dad, he might be running late. Being alone in a room with someone you don't get along with was stifling, but I had to respect my dad's wishes and stay.
I heard from my dad that my match would be the next CEO. So why are you here? Must be some mistake. This is just awful.
Honestly, I feel the same way. But I couldn't pick a fight with her, who's the daughter of our business partner, so I voiced my lingering doubts. Lily, didn't you mention you had a boyfriend? Are you sure about this whole arranged date? Recalling Lily, who had bragged loudly about her wonderful boyfriend, I asked. She seemed at a loss for words. Just as I was pondering this, the door opened and Lily's father, David, walked in.
Sorry about that, Mike. Had to make a quick bathroom trip. What do you think? My Lily's a beauty, isn't she?
David, all smiles, sat down next to her. He probably had no idea Lily and I worked in the same department.
Dad, I can't stand him.
Ignoring a shocked David, she looked at me and scoffed.
Look at him. So plain looking. I can't imagine marrying someone like him. And did you know, Dad? He entered the workforce 2 years later than usual. Probably wasn't smart enough for any good college.
Hey, Lily.
Anyway, there's no way I'm marrying this guy.
Facing Lily's resolute declaration, all I could do was give her a smile. Then, the door opened again.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
My dad walked in. With his usual grin, he sat next to me nonchalantly. Lily turned pale at the sight of him.
You've got to be kidding. Why is the CEO here?
I'm glad to see you. I'm Steve Brown, Mike's father.
My dad's casual greeting had Lily flapping her mouth open and shut in shock, while David looked down, his face pale. It must have been quite the surprise for her to suddenly see the CEO of the company she worked at in such a situation like this.
Are Mike and Mr. Brown related? Why do you have different last names?
A flustered Lily asked, to which I replied, my parents divorced right after I was born. I was first taken in by my mom, but after she passed away from disease, I was raised by my dad. I've kept using my mom's last name, which is Smith, because there's no need to keep changing surnames. Looking flustered, she was cornered as my dad began to speak.
Well, I could clearly hear your voice from the other side of the door. My son might have a plain face like me, and yes, he started college 2 years late. But that wasn't because he wasn't smart. It was because he was fighting against disease.
What?
I hadn't told anyone about my disease in college, and I kept it a secret at work too. I felt there was no need to spill it, and I didn't want anyone's pity. My dad probably told her about my disease because he was angry behind that smile. He's always been the kind to corner people with a smile. A man who would reveal his anger in the quietest ways.
If you think my son is plain and not smart, then perhaps this meeting wasn't meant to be.
Lily, who seemed baffled from the start, was pushed away by my dad and stood up. Without hesitation, she stormed out. David, pale as a sheet, left her to Dad and I ran after her. On a bridge over a gravel-covered pond, Lily gazed blankly at the water's surface. As I approached the teary-eyed Lily, she looked up and gave a weak smile.
It's funny, isn't it? You've always laughed inside, hiding the fact that you're the CEO's son. Making fun of someone like me must have felt like a comedy.
I didn't laugh. I hid my status because I didn't want to be treated differently. I never imagined it would lead to this. I regret making you feel humiliated. She started talking, her expression melancholic. Apparently, she always envied me. Through her eyes, I was someone admired by the newbies and consistently at the top in sales performance, truly an exceptional individual. Being raised as the CEO's daughter with immense expectations, she felt insecure about not being at the top and kept making sarcastic remarks towards me. It seems her tales of dating a wealthy heir were just a facade, a lie for show. Like me, she didn't have a boyfriend, and her parents, concerned, arranged this blind date for her.
You can mock me. It's clear how insignificant I am.
I never did. True, your words were annoying, but I don't dislike you, Lily.
Why?
Because I know how hard you've worked, Lily. Everyone knew she got her job in our company through connections. Yet, she never received warnings regardless of her performance. Still, she worked hard and consistently secured the second spot in sales. Even though she often yelled at me loudly in the office, she knew I always had the newbies back when they were overwhelmed with work and that I consistently tackled tasks with a broad perspective. The newbies are aware of how hard you worked. Nobody is making fun of you.
Yet I was always jealous and said such awful things to you, Mike.
In my experience, I believe that as long as you're alive, you can always start over. When I was able to attend college 2 years late due to an disease, I realized that as long as you live, you can always get another shot. After being given an individual's life expectancy and teetering on the edge of life and death, I've come to understand that as long as I have life, I can restart any number of times. Lily, you can too. Let's work hard together from now on, as competitors. At my words, she wiped away the tears that formed at the corners of her eyes. She then nodded affirmatively.
I'm truly sorry for everything up till now. I will start over. I will change. And I will surpass Mike's sales record.
I nodded at her determined proclamation. While the blind date ended disastrously, it seemed to be a turning point for her. From that day on, she stopped bad-mouthing about anyone. She diligently went about her work, using her strength of broad vision to help colleagues with their tasks, earning trust from those around her. She truly turned her relationships around, just as she said. Not to be outdone, I worked harder than ever. Having Lily steadily maintaining her position just behind me, as I was at the top of the sales chart, boosted my motivation. After a hard day's work, I was on my way home. Walking from the office towards the subway station, I felt a tap on my back. Turning around, I saw Lily, out of breath and looking like she'd run to catch up. Lily. Wondering what she wanted, she looked up at me with her face all flushed.
I need to tell you something. If I surpass your sales performance, you're taking me out to dinner. And of course, it's on you. Promise, okay?
Without waiting for a response, she sped off, heading quickly towards the station. Remembering her blushing face, for the first time in my life, I found myself hoping that maybe, just maybe, I'd like to lose to her in the next sales performance. With a middle school reunion invitation in front of me, I was torn about whether to attend or not. The reason being, there were people I wanted to see and others I didn't. I grew up in a middle-class family. We didn't live lavishly, but we had a decent life. All that changed just before I started middle school. It began when my father became responsible for a relative's debt for which he had co-signed. The relative had started a business, but it failed, leaving a massive debt behind and then disappearing. Most of my dad's salary went towards paying off that debt, and my mom, who had health issues and couldn't work outside, tried to support the family with a home-based job, but it paid peanuts. Because of this, I went to school every day wearing a tattered uniform, torn pants, and sneakers that were too big, so I crushed the heels to make them fit. The ones who always mocked and looked down on me were Mike and his gang.
Look at the Poe guy. Wilson's house is such a dump.
Wilson, aren't you embarrassed wearing such a ragged uniform?
Don't come near me. You stink because you probably don't even shower.
At first, they only ridiculed me with words, but as they realized I wouldn't retaliate, their actions escalated. They'd sometimes rip my notebooks, hide my pencils, or even throw my handouts in the trash. It wasn't my fault that my family was Poe, and my parents had always worked hard without doing anything wrong. Despite that, I lamented the unfairness of why I had to endure such mistreatment. No one in my class tried to help me. They just watched from afar. No one wanted to be associated with a bullied kid like me, except for one person. There was another girl in my class who was also being bullied. However, it wasn't because she was Poe. Ashley had pigtails, long bangs, wore glasses, and gave off square impression. She'd sit alone during breaks and read books. When someone spoke to her, she'd freeze up, turning red and unable to respond. For just that, she was called lame, gloomy, and snobby, and the girls began to avoid her. Unlike the boys' bullying, the girls didn't get physically aggressive. Instead, they'd ignore her, exclude her from groups, or loudly gossip about her just enough so she could hear, which felt mentally torturous. I had a secret crush on Ashley during middle school. We were both forced to be library assistants because nobody else wanted the tedious job. At first, I felt a kinship with her because we were both bullied in class, and I was curious about her. But as we worked together at the library counter, organized the bookshelves, and talked about our interests when no one was around, I got to know her gentle, kind, and sincere nature and started to feel attracted to her. That doesn't mean we started a romantic relationship like in a love story. I lacked the courage to confess my feelings to her, and before I knew it, graduation came. After graduation, I started working to reduce my parents' debt, and she went on to a college prep school. We never saw each other after that. Thinking that Mike and his gang might be at the reunion made me reluctant to go, but my desire to see Ashley was stronger. So, I mustered the courage and decided to attend the reunion. Standing in front of the reunion venue, my knees trembled slightly. The memories of being bullied in middle school resurfaced. But more than a decade has passed since then. Surely, they must have matured and become thoughtful adults. It's gonna be okay. I reassured myself and headed for the entrance. I saw my former classmates chatting away in groups. However, being a loner who didn't belong to any group back then, I couldn't find a circle to join. I looked around the venue, but I couldn't spot Ashley anywhere. Why did I even come to a reunion with mostly unpleasant memories from middle school? I sighed and headed to the buffet corner to get a plate. I thought I'd eat and drink for a bit and then leave early. As I loaded my plate and was deciding where to eat, I suddenly heard a voice from behind.
Hey, isn't that Wilson?
Long time no see.
Been keeping well.
Mike and his gang smiled at me, genuinely pleased. It was as if they had never bullied me, talking to me as if we were close friends. I felt a mix of surprise and unease. Well, so. As I responded, Mike wrapped his arm around my shoulder.
Hey, it's been ages since we met. Let's have a toast.
If they're trying to forget about the bullying, should I let bygones be bygones too? Indeed, it doesn't do any good to dwell on the past. Perhaps it's time to build a new relationship with them. I decided to change my mindset and managed a forced smile. Yeah, sure. Upon hearing my reply, Mike immediately flagged down a waiter and ordered some red wine. While waiting, the conversation revolved around our recent lives. Mike proudly mentioned that he's now working at a prestigious company after graduating from college. The other two also mentioned that they are in sales or office jobs.
So, what have you been up to, Wilson?
Mike casually asked, and I hesitated before replying. I've been working at the factory ever since I graduated from high school. Mike and his friends exclaimed, seriously, that's impressive. Just then, the waiter brought the red wine.
Well, a toast to our hard-working Wilson.
As Mike received the wine, without hesitation, he poured the entire bottle over my head. What? I was dumbfounded, and Mike and his friends burst out laughing.
Working at a factory with just a high school diploma. That's the bottom of the barrel.
And you've been there forever? Can't believe it.
Wilson, you're such a loser.
They hadn't changed a bit since middle school. I was a fool to think I could trust them. The strong scent of red wine hit my nostrils, and I felt it sticky on my skin. I wanted to escape as fast as possible. Suddenly, a stunning woman stood before me. She was strikingly beautiful, like an actress or a model.
I had a feeling you guys would do something, so I started recording. I never thought you'd go this far.
The outraged woman showed me a video on her smartphone of Mike pouring wine on me.
What? It's just a way to welcome a guy who can't even afford red wine. And who the heck are you?
I, too, was wondering who she was. I didn't recall such a beauty in our class.
You were bragging about working at a big company earlier. My dad's the CEO of your parent company. I'll be showing him this video.
Upon hearing her words, Mike went pale.
Your dad's the CEO.
I'll let you know about any implications later.
She told Mike, and then took my hand.
You'll catch a cold like this. Come with me.
Confused, I was led out of the venue. Outside, a luxurious black car was waiting.
Get in?
I hesitated, not wanting to stain the posh car with my wine-soaked clothes. Seeing my reluctance, she firmly pushed me inside.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't stand by and watch.
She apologized to me, and I just shook my head in silence. She didn't seem like a bad person at all. I decided to just follow her quietly for now. We arrived at a grand mansion. The gate opened automatically, and a luxury car smoothly drove in.
I'm sorry you have to wear my dad's clothes.
She handed me a change of clothes and told me to take a shower. Confused about what was happening, I felt it'd be rude to stay covered in red wine, so I gratefully took the offered shower. The sticky feeling of the red wine was gone, and I felt refreshed as I returned to the living room where she had led me earlier. The beautiful woman from before was there, but she seemed different. Her hair was now in a ponytail and she was wearing glasses, looking at me with a tense expression.
Wilson, don't you remember me?
As I stared at her, the features of a girl I once knew began to emerge in my mind. Ashley, I asked hesitantly, and she nodded with a smile.
I'm so glad you remembered me.
I wanted to tell her that I had always hoped to see her again at the reunion, but I didn't have the courage. Thank you for helping me out earlier. I thanked her, and Ashley waved it off.
I've always wanted to repay you for back then, so I'm glad I could help you out a little.
Seeing my puzzled look, she explained, back in middle school, Ashley had been ostracized by all the girls and gossiped about. She became so scared to go to school that she thought about dropping out every day. Then one day, she was forced to become a library assistant. She loved reading and didn't mind the library work, but her biggest worry was who she would work with. The other library assistant turned out to be me, who was also bullied in the class. Ashley had always cared and worried about me, seeing me as someone in the same situation. Though she found it hard to talk to others and often couldn't speak due to her nerves, she said she never had that problem with me.
You always talked to me with a kind smile, and that gave me the motivation to keep going to school. If you weren't the other library assistant, I would have stayed home and dropped out.
Ashley looked at me with teary eyes.
You saved me, Wilson. You were my first love.
My heart raced. I realized that if I didn't say something now, I'd regret it forever. I've always liked you too, Ashley. Those moments in the library with you were the only bright memories in my tough middle school years. I decided to attend the reunion today because I wanted to see you again. Unexpectedly, my first love came true. Later, I found out that the CEO of the main company, Ashley's father, had reported the misconduct of one of their employees to the subsidiary and had criticized the lack of employee training. That employee was demoted to a subcontractor. When I started dating Ashley, I soon met her parents. Even though I had only a middle school education and worked in a factory, her parents didn't look down on me. Instead, they thanked me, saying, "We never realized Ashley had such a hard time in middle school. Thank you for supporting her." I was humbled by the gratitude. Furthermore, he even said, "If you're up for it, would you like to work at our company?" But I respectfully declined the offer. I've heard that the hiring criteria for your company requires at least a high school diploma. I have no intention of getting in through connections, so could I possibly try out on my own after I graduate from high school? Hearing my response, Ashley's father nodded in understanding. Before starting high school, my first priority was to repay the debt. My mother had already passed away, and my father, who had children later in life, was approaching retirement. I desperately wanted to settle the debt before then. Through official recruiting channel, I took the exam for Ashley's father's company, passed, and was proudly hired as full-time employee. Getting this far was all thanks to Ashley's unwavering support. Though her appearance had changed since middle school, her heart hadn't changed a bit. Fast forward 10 years after reuniting with Ashley, Ashley's father, who became my father-in-law, held our child in his arms with a soft smile on his face.
I finally get to hold my grandchild. I have no regrets now.
Next to him, my mother-in-law chimed in, "Well, I can't go until I see our little Jessica in a wedding dress," causing laughter to erupt. The day after Jessica was born, my father passed away, looking content. If I hadn't attended that reunion that day, I might never reconnected with Ashley, felt such overwhelming happiness, or been able to show my dad his grandchild. My dad faced so many hardships in his life. I hope I made him proud at least a bit. With these thoughts, I gazed at my daughter, peacefully sleeping in her grandfather's arms.